What's going on, guys? Welcome to your 29th Java tutorial, and in today's tutorial we're going to introduce you to something called a thread. Now what a thread allows us to do is multiple things at the same time. So if our computers couldn't use threads, then we couldn't be listening to music and surfing the web, or we couldn't be using the microphone as I'm recording my screen right now. It'd just be crazy. So threads are pretty vital for everything, especially game development. I'm just going to show you a quick introduction to a thread, and then once we get into the game development section, I'll go into threads in more detail, or when we develop an application or something like that. But this is just a quick introduction to the thread. So here's our public void or public static void method here, and I just created a new project. You don't have to, but just make sure you're in this method here because it's our main method. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a thread, call it T. We're going to set this equal to a new thread, and just like we always do, something like that. But we're also going to give it some additional brackets instead of a semicolon like we usually do. Now what a thread is looking for when it starts is something called run. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, public void run, like that, and we're also going to give that some brackets there. And as you can see, before we get into our thread too much, it's giving us an error right here. This is the closing statement to this bracket here. All we have to do is put a semicolon here because again, it's basically the computer's reading this as one line of code, and we need to put our semicolon at the end. So now when this thread starts, it's going to call this run method. So whatever we want to do, we want to do within the run method. First thing we're going to do is just a system out print. Pretty basic, pretty familiar with this. We're going to get into some graphics here pretty soon, but I just wanted to show you guys the thread before we do that. And all we're going to do is we're going to say this is thread T, something like that, and bam, done with that line. And then the threads can also sleep, because they can work as hard as they want, but we can give them a break and just say, hey, thread, sleep. And we give it a time, such as 100 milliseconds. So that's 10 times a second. It's gonna be chilling, sipping on its water by the beach or something like that, and that's all it's gonna do. Now this is giving us an error right now because we have to surround it with a try and catch. Eclipse makes it very easy. We just hover over, say surround with a try and catch, and as you can see, we have a ton of brackets now. That's why we wanted to get that semicolon out of the way at the beginning. But there we go. Now our thread's going to sleep for 100 milliseconds. So it's going to run this system printout once, and then it's going to sleep for 100 milliseconds. So what we're going to do is we're going to close all of this code within a for loop. So we're just going to say for int I is equal to 0, semicolon, as long as I is less than, let's say, 10 for this example, and then I++. And then all we're going to do is add some brackets here. And alright, and then what we're going to do to our for loop is just add a bracket, surround it, everything pretty much within our run method. So after we try and sleep, and it catches the exception if there is one, we're going to end it there. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-F to format everything, make it nice and pretty for you. So there we go. We have our thread set up. It's going to loop through 10 times. It's going to print out this is thread T, then sleep for 1/10 of a second, and then it's going to loop through our for loop again and print out this is thread T, until it does that 10 times. But the last thing we have to do is we have to start our thread. All we've done is defined our thread. So after this, where we placed our semicolon, we're going to go there, and all we're going to do is our thread name, which we called T. We're just going to say start. So that's going to start our thread, and bam, when we save this and run it, oh, okay, maybe we should do a system print line here instead of just print, and there you go. As you can see, it prints this is T 10 times, kind of slow, but it's good for this example. The next thing we're going to do is we're just going to copy all of this, including our start command here, and paste it below. So we create another thread. We're going to call this thread T2. We're going to say this is T2 thread, and right here T2 as well. So now when we save this and run it, we get T and then T2, T, T2, And as you can see, they're both running at the same time, because when we call this start method, it's going to start that thread and it's going to start this thread. So essentially we don't have to wait for our first thread called T to loop through 10 times before we get to our next start of our second thread. They both start at the same time pretty much, and they're both running at the same time. Those for loops don't have to be completed to get to the next thread, because threads can run together. That's why they're useful. Pretty basic introduction to threads, but hopefully you guys get kind of the concept of what a thread is and what it allows us to do. That's pretty much all I wanted you guys to learn from this tutorial, and I'll catch you in the next one. So have a good one. Peace.